Welcome back, you law-abiding citizens and premature Christmas enthusiasts, to episode 36 of the Tentacles of Cuyahoga County. I'm your host, the infamous ex-chief, coming to you from my studio that's more decked out than your neighbor's house on November 1st. Before we dive into this week's shenanigans, let's address the elephant in the room. Or should I say, the reindeer in the roof? It's Thanksgiving week, folks. But judging from the tinsel and carols already assaulting your senses, you'd think Santa was about to slide down your chimney any minute. Let's give the turkey its due before we start roasting chestnuts, huh? Now, for those of you who've been paying attention, and I know that's a challenge for some of you, you might have noticed some new additions to the studio. Those signed cigar box lids. I have one from, you can barely see it, it's from All Saints Cigars right there, and Maria Lucia right here. They've been, I've been with me for a while now, but I removed the lids from the boxes that the owners of the manufacturers have signed for me, added them to my studio here, so I've got my Beatles poster, which is almost completely invisible. My Walking Dead original cast that was signed by every member of the original cast of Walking Dead, along with my signatures here now. And I actually have some Indians memorabilia behind there, that as well. Some of it signed. And I get constant comments, yes, this does work. I think it does. The popcorn machine. And everybody wants to know if I'm ever going to have popcorn. I might do it. And I also don't want to forget, and you can't apparently see it at all, I have a beautiful Sandeman port in the back. And that's been tempting me longer than some of you have been, waiting for your Christmas presents. Now, let's get into some of the more colorful police stories from the last week. In Florida, because where else, a man was arrested for attempting to time travel by driving his car through a strip mall. Apparently, he missed the memo that the DeLoreans are the preferred vehicle for temporal displacement. On a more serious note, in New York, quick-thinking officers managed to rescue a man who had fallen onto the subway tracks just seconds before a train arrived. A reminder that not all heroes wear capes, some just wear badges. And I sort of wonder, living in, I don't live in New York, but I'm saying for those residents that are in New York, I wonder how often that actually happens. I imagine maybe it happens all the time where people fall on there. I don't know. And a twist that would make any detective scratch their head. A burglar in California was caught after he accidentally pocket dialed 911 during the break-in. Can't make it up. I guess crime doesn't pay, but it does call. So maybe in the future you lock your cell phone. I don't know. Remember, if you want to reach out to the show, you can email us at thetentaclesofcuyahogacounty@gmail.com. thetentaclesofcuyahogacounty@gmail.com. And for those of you who prefer a more secure method, scan the QR code on your screen, or I will drop it in the link description in the bottom. And I always say, well, I guess now I can put it here. I have a flag up here, but nobody can see. And again, I'm still working through this. My chair. I love my chair, though. Very comfy chair. Switched my chair, and everything got lowered. Hitting my mic. Before we dive into this week's main course, let's take a moment to address the silent majority out there. Yes, that's you, the viewers, who keep forgetting to hit the like button. We see you enjoying the content. I can see it by the analytics. But those likes are as elusive as a turkey on Thanksgiving morning. So do us a favor and smash that like button now before you forget. And while we're at it, if you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. We need you to join our tentacle nation, become part of the community here. Your support helps us keep bringing you the best stories from Northeast Ohio and beyond. So we're getting into the main segment of the show here after I sip my coffee. So there's been a couple of things that I have been putting on a shelf, so to speak. While we were doing the Janice Christensen special, I shelved a couple of things, and one of them is this. So today, we're diving into the Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost latest brainchild, the Blue Ribbon Task Force report on police training. And we're talking about the Blue Ribbon Task Force report on police training because apparently what our law enforcement really needed was another committee telling them how to do their jobs. If you weren't aware, in the fall of 2023, Yost decided to assemble his very own Justice League. 11 supposed experts tasked with revolutionizing police training. Leading this merry band was Tom Quinlan, the big cheese at the Ohio Peace Officer Training Academy. You recall him correctly. You recall him correct? The ex-chief from the city of Columbus. I believe he also worked for Madison Township Police Department. And I'm not disparaging any of my folks in Madison Township, but we'll get into my point of conjecture later here in a second. So also joining Tom Quinlan, who I actually did attend, Opano makes you, as you become a police chief in Ohio, you have to take police chief training, and Tom Quinlan was actually in my training at Opano. So, joining him was Emily Ribnick, and she's armed with more letters after her name than the alphabet soup she probably had for lunch. So who's the rest of the crew, you're asking? Well, they tell us it's a mix of cops, shrinks, and community leaders. Diversity, folks. It's all about diversity. But you know what? The motley crew might just have stumbled onto some decent ideas and fell extremely short on others. I cannot actually locate anywhere a list of who is actually on the committee, with the exception of a couple of folks that I just named, and that's only because they've spoken publicly relative to being on the committee. I have requested this information, so I'll try to keep you up to date if I ever get it. I'm sure I will. Now, let's dive into the master plan to fix Ohio's police training. And spoiler alert, it involves PowerPoint and role-playing games. But wait, there's more. First up, they want to swap out the 72 hours of old school training for shiny new courses. Because nothing says modern policing like basic and interpersonal communications and mediation. That's the title of it really it is. I can already hear the criminals quaking in their boots. But here is where some valid points come in. Current U.S. average of 833 hours of basic police training is a joke compared to international standards. Germany trains their officers for 2.5 years, Finland for 3 years. Maybe we should take a page from their book and extend our training beyond a measly 22 weeks. Now, here's a shocker. They want cops to learn how to talk to people currently. U.S. academies provide an average of only 10 hours on communication skills and 8 hours each on de-escalation and crisis intervention. That's right, folks. We spend more time teaching officers how to shoot than how to avoid shooting. And the task force wants to change that. And honestly, I don't necessarily disagree as long as efforts are still made for proper use of force training, because that seems to be a thing that we're trying to skimp on. And we can't skimp on use of force training. So hold your hats, because the future is here. They want to bring in virtual and augmented reality into police training. Because if Grand Theft Auto has taught us anything, it's that video games are the perfect training ground for law enforcement. But jokes aside, this actually could provide valuable experience in a controlled, safe environment. Because that's the way we operate in law enforcement, in a controlled, safe environment. Right? They're proposing a new system of certification levels. It's like Boy Scout badges, but for cops. Collect them all. Remember the Opano Master Criminal Investigator classification? Anyone? Bueller? Apparently, our current physical standards are too tough. Can't have that, can we? Let's lower the bar a bit. Who needs peak physical condition when you're chasing suspects, right? Not sure where the logic is necessarily on this. Now, let's talk about what the task force missed. Where there's emphasis on stress management and resilience, instead of the stress-oriented military style approach, how about teaching officers to recognize stress and self-regulate their responses? The lack of adequate mental health support for law enforcement officers following traumatic experience is a critical issue that deserves attention. I've mentioned this many, many times on this show. This should be a higher priority than de-escalation training. Despite the high-stress nature of police work and frequent exposure to traumatic events, many officers do not receive sufficient mental health care. Law enforcement officers frequently encounter traumatic situations as part of their job. A 2015 survey found that officers witness an average of 188 traumatic and critical incidents during their careers. That's an average. Some departments, like East Cleveland, are much higher. These incidents can include responding to domestic violence, conducting dangerous traffic stops, confronting armed suspects, and witness human suffering, homicides, shootings. Repeated exposure to trauma can have severe mental health impacts on officers. Officers are at a higher risk for developing post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, anxiety, depression, and suicidal behaviors. A 2018 study by the Police Public Contact Survey conducted by the U.S. Census Bureau showed that 69% of officers reported unresolved or lingering mental health challenges from stressful experiences. Despite the clear need, many law enforcement agencies lack robust mental health support systems. According to First Help, which is an organization that tracks law enforcement and first responder suicides, only about 23% of officers who died by suicide had reported seeking some level of help beforehand. And approximately 17% of officers sought assistance specifically for PTSD, while only 7% sought help for any form of mental health treatment. Several factors contribute to officers not receiving adequate mental health care. Number one, and it's still hugely popular today, is the stigma surrounding mental health issues in law enforcement culture. You get made fun of very quickly. Concerns about confidentiality and potential impact on job status, lack of access to culturally appropriate mental health services for law enforcement. And to address this issue, experts recommend developing clear policies on mental health services that minimize impact on an officer's job status, providing confidentiality and privacy protection to encourage the use of mental health services, implementing peer support programs within agencies. That's critical. Partnering with local mental health organizations to provide easy access to appropriate services, and actively promoting a culture that supports mental health and well-being from leadership down. Addressing the lack of mental health support for law enforcement after traumatic experiences is crucial for officers' well-being, their job performance, their overall public safety. Implementing comprehensive mental health programs and changing agency culture to support help-seeking behaviors are essential steps in tackling this issue. So I'm bringing it home here. While the Blue Ribbon Task Force's recommendations for Ohio law enforcement training include a focus on de-escalation and critical decision-making, they conspicuously overlook the crucial issue of officers' mental health support by prioritizing tactical skills and technology integration over comprehensive mental health programs. The task force misses a vital opportunity to address the psychological toll of police work and improve overall officer well-being. And quite frankly, until OPATA starts digging into the real-world experiences of officers from violent cities instead of just sipping lattes and relying on their cozy suburban Columbus departments for facts, this whole initiative feels about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. It's like they're handing out training certificate to officers who are already getting a blank check for all the training they want while ignoring the gritty realities faced by those on the front lines in tougher neighborhoods. And until that changes, we might as well be throwing money at a wall. Now, how do we turn this blue ribbon pipe dream into reality? You know, the Blue Ribbon Commission. Well, first it goes to the Ohio Peace Officers Training Commission. Then it's off to the legislature where it'll be debated, dissected, and probably disemboweled. But hey, as of July 2024, the Ohio Peace Officer Training Commission has unanimously approved this vision. Shocking. I know. So there you have it, folks. Ohio's grand plan to become the national model for police training. And I put my air quotes up there because Attorney General Dave Yost, ever the visionary, proclaimed that this would produce better trained officers who are prepared to meet the evolving professional demands of modern law enforcement. Translation, they'll know which end of the taser to hold. Task Force Chair Tom Quinlan, remember the ex-Columbus guy, chimed in declaring these recommendations will revolutionize law enforcement training in Ohio. Revolutionize? Like the French Revolution? Or more like the spinning wheel kind? Will this actually improve policing? Or is it just another bureaucratic shuffle to avoid addressing the real issue? Only time will tell. But hey, at least we're rearranging the decks on the Titanic of public trust. The task force seems more focused on tweaking fitness tests and adding VR training than tackling the deep-seated problems plaguing law enforcement. In these hate the cops times, as some might say, it looks like Ohio's big solution is to give officers fancier toys and a pat on the back, and meanwhile the fundamental issues remain conveniently unaddressed. But don't worry, folks, we're sure those new integrated lesson plans will solve everything. Stay skeptical, but hopeful, Tentacle Nation. And until next time, this is the Tentacles of Cuyahoga County reminding you that sometimes change comes from the most unexpected places, even a bureaucratic task force. And remember, as Barney Fife would say, the weed of crimes bears bitter fruit. If you want more information on this groundbreaking, earth-shattering report, I will include the link at the bottom. Just click on that fancy link, and you'll be whisked away to our wonderland of press releases, videos, an actual PDF of the Blue Ribbon Report. That's right, folks, a real PDF. It's like Christmas came early, but instead of presents, you get a 50-page document on law enforcement training. Don't forget your reading glasses and a strong cup of coffee. You're going to need them. Here's the infamous Chief telling you happy gobble gobble Thanksgiving, and we'll talk to you next week.